Hi guitarlings, I'm Gray and this is Hub Guitar. Today we're going to learn the Celtic tune for fingerstyle guitar called The Kid on the Mountain. So a couple things before we start. This is in standard tuning, which a lot of these Celtic tunes are not. So it's a good place to start if you're not used to alternate tunings. However, I am putting a capo on the 2nd fret. I feel like that helps the guitar play a little bit more fast and bouncy, which is definitely great for this style. Kid on the Mountain is a slip jig, which means that it's written in the meter called 9/8, which means that there are 3 primary beats per each measure, and they are subdivided further into another group of 3. So overall, it sounds like this: da 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 da. 1, 2, 3. Da 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 da. And that's called a slip jig, maybe because he just slipped an extra beat into there. A jig would normally be 6/8, which would have 2 beats subdivided into 3. Alright, so starting at measure 1, we're going to play off of an E minor chord. So we're going to put our index finger on the 2nd fret of the 4th string, and we're going to hammer to the 4th fret of the next string, and come back down. You can pull off or just come right back down. And then we're going to pull off from 4 to 2 to open. So lots of hammer-ons and pull-offs are written here. You don't have to follow all of them, and you can also add some extras of your own. Back to measure 2. For beat 2 of measure 2, we're switching the bass to the A. So we're pulling off with our first finger on the 1st fret of the 2nd string, pulling off to the open string, and then going to the 2nd fret of the 3rd string. And for beat 3, we've got open E, 2nd string, then open G string, and 2nd fret of the 4th string. So measures 1 and 2 sound like this. Measure 3 is pretty similar to measure 1. Except for the 16th notes at the end. So to get that, you definitely want to do a quick hammer on. Otherwise, it'll be hard to get it fast enough. For measure 4, we've got a C chord forming, and we want to take note of the correct fingering. So we're going to put our 2nd finger on the 3rd fret of the 5th string and pluck that with the open 2nd string. And then we're going to put our index finger on the 2nd fret of the 3rd string, pulling off to the open string, and then put our pinky on the 4th fret of the 4th string. And you want to use that fingering so you can get all of those notes happening at once. If you don't do that, it sounds kind of dead. A lot of the meaning is lost if the notes aren't ringing at once. So for the 2nd half of that measure, I go back to the 2nd fret of the 3rd string with my index finger, pull off, and then I do a big pull off from 4 to 2 to open. So for measure 5, we're going to go to a G chord. We're going to put our 2nd finger on the 3rd fret of the big string and play that with the open B string, then open G string, open B string. Then we're going to put our index finger on the 2nd fret of the 3rd string and pinky on the 4th fret of the 4th string for the same reason as we did that for measure 4. And then we go to some open strings. For measure 6, we build up a D chord with lots of hammer-ons, so we're going to play the middle 2 strings open, hammer on to the 2nd fret of the 3rd string with the index finger. Play the open 2nd string, hammer on with the 3rd finger to the 3rd fret, and then play the 2nd fret of the high E string, and then do a pull off to the open string. Notice that I've still got my ring finger on the 3rd fret of the 3rd string, which I pluck again, before doing a pull off to the 1st fret, and then put my 2nd finger on the 2nd fret. So altogether I have this. Lots of hammer-ons and pull-offs there. And again, they're kind of, articulations are seen as somewhat optional. You can do them, you can do it without them, you can add extra articulations, whatever you like. But I think with a tune like this, it sounds kind of livelier and bouncier with plenty of hammer-ons and pull-offs. On to measure 7, which is very similar to measure 5, and measure 8, which is also similar to some of the other content that we've seen. So for the next section of Kid on the Mountain, we go into a melody that's mostly on the high E string accompanied by open bass strings. So you want to focus on making that melody sound nice and clear, and also making sure that you let the bass ring out for as long as you can each measure. Starting in measure 9, I've got my second finger on the 3rd fret of the high E string, and I pull off to the 2nd fret of the high E string. I can pull off again or just pluck, and then I'm going to go open, 2, and open, and then back to open, and then there's a 16th note at the end. So it's like this. Measure 10, still an E minor chord, so I'm plucking the open E with G on the top. That's my second finger. And I do that as a pull off and a hammer-on. And then second beat I do is 2 hammer-ons. And then I put my pinky on the 5th fret of the high E string, pulling off to the 2nd fret, and then putting my second finger on the 3rd fret of the 2nd string. Notice that I can add hammer-ons freely as I like. Sometimes I do them, sometimes I don't. So I try to diligently note the hammer-ons and pull-offs, but sometimes I'll play it a little bit differently than what I wrote here, and you might too. That's kind of the point. All right, measure 11. Now we're climbing up the neck a little bit. So we're going from 3 to 5. That's the 16th notes there, and you want to do that with a hammer-on because it's pretty quick. And then we're going to the D chord here, so we've got the open D on the 4th string with the 7th fret of the high E string, and we're going down to the 5th fret and to the 3rd fret. For beat 2 of measure 12, I've got my index finger, I'm hammering to the 5th fret, and I'm pulling back to the 3rd fret. And for beat 3 of measure 12, I'm going from 2nd to open to 3rd fret of the 2nd string. For measure 13, lots of open strings. Be sure to observe the slight change in feel here, because now there are some quarter notes as well as eighths. A quarter note is going to be the same duration as 2 eighth notes. So you should hear something like this in your head. Da, 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 da. And as silly as that sounds, I kind of sing out the rhythms when I'm having difficulty. Da, 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 da. That's how, to this day, I still commit a difficult rhythm to memory. I sing out the underlying subdivision or the underlying pulse, which is basically the smallest unit of measurement you're encountering in the song. In this song, well, there are 16th notes, but mainly it's the eighth notes that we're keeping track of. So to keep track of bigger notes, I count eighth notes against them. Da, 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 da. Measure 14. Da, 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 da. Measure 15. So measure 16 is pretty much the same as measure 12. Now we're at measure 17 with another E minor chord. Measure 18. And measure 19. Pretty similar to what we've encountered so far. Measure 20. The last line keeps it interesting with a change of pattern. So we're starting with an E minor chord. But we've got to find a way to deal with the fact that we're playing all 6 strings in one measure. So I like to do my thumb and my index, following my middle finger. And then I switch to ring, middle, index, and index again. Or I might do thumb and index, 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 ring, middle, index, index, index. So you've got to play with that and figure out which combination of fingers is good, but try not to overuse any one finger. Measure 22 combines that E minor chord with a little slide. And measure 23 is pretty much the same as measure 21. And measure 25, we've got the bottom part of an E minor. Basically, it's an E power chord, and we just let it resolve to that. All right, so that's it for the kid on the mountain. Now, what do you picture? Is it a young child standing on the mountain, or maybe it's a goat? I think which one you've got in your head really changes your interpretation of the tune. So be sure you know in your mind whether you are playing a song about a boy or a song about a goat. All right, so that's it for the kid on the mountain. I hope you enjoyed, and thanks for watching.